The possibilities are endless. The league resets once again on Thursday with new blood and new opportunities to rebuild franchises with the best prospects available. The 2019 draft is almost here. We're here to preview with our 2019 mock draft presented by State Farm. Welcome into our Atlanta studio. Good to have you with us as always. I'm Matt Weiner. Tom Penn will be along with big picture assessments of some of the teams picking on Thursday in just a bit, while our mock picks will be made by veteran executive Billy King and, of course, Andy Katz, who's been covering the draft in college basketball for years. Billy, as a class, how does this 2019 group stack up?
Well, it starts with Zion. I think that's what everybody's talking about. But I think in every draft, people say it's a deep draft, it's not a deep draft. I think in each draft, it's in the behind the holder. I think people will find players in this draft. You just got to do your homework and do your research. But I think there are good players further down in the draft. But it is Zion at the top.
So arguably, this is the most consensus number one pick since LeBron James. But in covering this draft, there are other candidates out there that we can go back. And I remember all these drafts where it was unanimous for the most part that these four players were also going to be number one. Go back to Derrick Rose when the Bulls were going to pick him, and they did. Blake Griffin for the Clippers. John Wall with the Wizards. And then Anthony Davis, we'll talk about him this evening, of course, coming off that national championship with Kentucky in 2012. He then is the consensus number one. So since 2012, this is the most consensus number one in Zion Williamson.
And injuries aside, all those guys have been really, really good NBA players. We'll hear Zion's name in a moment. We'll mock our way through the first round in a bit. As a reminder, these picks are non-binding. Andy and Billy will not be held accountable for their selections, and the players will not receive so much as a hat as a result of this exercise. Also, not picking in the first round, mock or otherwise, the Mavericks, Nuggets, Kings, Rockets, Clippers, or world champion Raptors. The Lakers have agreed to trade away their fourth pick to the Pelicans, as you've probably heard, and that's where we'll begin with Tom Penn. Tom, this time last year, David Griffin was here in studio for this show. Now, Tom, thanks to lottery luck and the Anthony Davis deal with the Lakers, he's in the middle of a total transformation in New Orleans. Yeah. Take us into the big changes in the Big Easy.
We miss you, Griff. Where are you? Where are you? Listen, the trade that happened is critically important and has to wait because of the money situation. They have to wait till the money matches next calendar year or next fiscal year. Every move now must complement Zion Williamson. They're going to take him at one. We all know it. But he has clarity now on exactly what to do. And the Anthony Davis deal did that. It brought in a bunch of young assets, and it brought in depth on the perimeter. They've got guys that are on the rise, that are ready to, they've been through their growing pains. Ingram's been through it. We'll see if he can pop. Lonzo Ball's been through it. We see if he can pop. They get Lonzo's dad, too. That's a nice bonus. But then the next thing they have is $22 million in cap space. And what do they do with that? And look for Griff to do nothing but complimentary moves with Zion Williamson. And, Billy, let's make it official. I'll throw it back to you. Who do they take at one in New Orleans?
Well, I think it's a tough decision, but I think they're going to take Zion Williamson. I mean, he's a guy that's been a phenom in college basketball. He's got the size, the athletic ability, handle the basketball. The only thing he really lacks is a guy that can really shoot the jump shot, but I love everything about him, especially with this NBA because it's positionless NBA. He can play 3, 4, and put the ball in his hands. I think he could be pretty special.
You know, what's crazy is I talk about this being a consensus number one. He was not the consensus number one prior to the season. Right. He had a monster game to open the season against Kentucky in the Champions Classic, and from that point on, but prior to that, it was his teammate, RJ Barrett, last summer that everyone was talking about as the number one pick.
No, he was good.
He will be the first player born this century drafted into the NBA, which is appropriate because it is a possibility that he comes to us from the future sometime, right? We have not seen human beings who can do what he does at his size.
No, and what he brings to the New Orleans organization with his social ability, he has 3.4 million followers on Instagram. He's got Twitter follows, so there'll be a lot of excitement. But basketball-wise, for his size, 6'7", 285, to be able to jump and finish like that, the one thing I think he does need to do is trim some of that weight off. I think he's got to drop some of the weight for his long-standing career, for his health-wise, but he is something that you've never seen in college basketball.
When you talk about the weight, you're talking about the beating on his knees, his joints.
Yeah, just over a long period of time. 82-game season, a long season.
I will tell you this also. I think teams, the community, locker room are going to love having him a part of that. In the number of different times I had a chance to interview him, especially when I interviewed him with RJ Barrett, he loves playing the game. He loves being a part of a team. And he's still, I know we say this all the time, he's still like a kid. I mean, he's still a teenager, and you can sense that sort of immaturity. I'm saying in a good way, like he's a sponge and wants to just sort of enjoy this all.
Yeah, I mean, he loves playing the game, and especially you didn't mention he loves playing at Duke. You mentioned all those things. You didn't say he loves playing at Duke also. But that's the thing about it. Why he came back when he was hurt because he loves playing the game of basketball. It's not about the money. It's about the joy of playing the game of basketball. So I think the fans of New Orleans and the fans of the NBA are going to love having him.
A lot of people took note of that as well. After the knee sprain, he could have sat out. He was already the number 1 pick. He decided to come back and play the game. All right, you're representing the Memphis Grizzlies here with the number 2 pick.
And with the number 2 pick, Memphis will select Ja Morant from Murray State. And if you didn't get a chance to see Morant during the NCAA tournament, well, you missed something, because against Marquette, he put on a show, a triple-double, 17 points, 16 assists, 11 boards. But even before that, he made a name for himself at Murray State in the OVC. They ended up winning the conference tournament to make sure they got to the NCAA tournament. But he is a special player. He's got a great edge to him in that nothing was handed to him, Billy. He had to earn it. He goes to Murray State because basically no other high-level recruited him, and he has put himself in this position. And when I talked to him when we were doing the lottery show in Chicago, we talked about players like Damian Lillard from Weber State, like Steph Curry from Davidson, guys that didn't go to the Dukes of the world and had to earn it, and that's what he did.
Yeah, I love him because he's a basketball player. You know, he doesn't have a lot of big muscles. He just got a basketball build, and he plays the game of basketball. He makes plays on the court that just come from reactionary. If the guy cuts him off, he gets to the hole, gets by him. He pulls up for a 3 and makes it. It reminds me like how Allen Iverson played. Allen wasn't a great shooter, wasn't a great driver, but he just scored, and he just has a knack for scoring, and that's why I look at Ja Morant. He just makes the plays to win, whether it's dunking on somebody, making that pass, shooting a 3. It's just basketball plays, and it comes easy to him.
Bob Cousy Award winner as the best point guard in the land last season, is coming off a minor knee surgery, but no one expects that to affect his career moving forward. All right, back to you, Billy. Number 3, lots of folks in Manhattan are waiting to hear what you have to say about the Knicks.
Well, I'm going to go with the guy that Andy said was the consensus number 1 at the beginning of college basketball season, and that's RJ Barrett out of Duke, Zion's teammate. Now, RJ is almost like a Tracy McGrady type basketball player. He's a guy that handles the basketball, not as great as an athlete as Tracy, but when he goes to the hole, he can finish with his left and right hand, and he has a knack for squeezing through and getting the ball up, whether it's left hand or right hand, and finding a way to score. The one area he'll have to improve on is shooting his jump shot, but he's a guy that's not afraid to work, so he'll go in the gym, he'll work with the coaches. I think New York is going to love him. I think his game will translate better to the NBA because there'll be a lot more spacing on the floor in college. As a team scouted him and Zion, they start packing in and made it tough for him to drive. But I think his game will translate tremendous in the pros.
And here's what's crazy. The night of the lottery, there was a lot of this, just exhaling and, absolute disappointment that the Knicks did not get the number 1 pick. But they essentially did get a number 1 pick. As Billy was saying, he was the number 1 pick prior to Zion Williamson.
Right.
And nothing has changed. He is a number 1 pick type talent. He's just going number 3. They are getting a star in New York. Everything's going to be fine. The world's not ending. The garden's not falling apart. They've got a star who can certainly help this franchise climb back up.
Well, it's got to be perfect or terrible, or they wouldn't be Knicks fans, right? I mean, there's no in between.
But it's almost like the year LeBron got drafted. It was LeBron, then the guy number 3. I think it was Bosh was in that draft. Carmelo was in that draft. Dwayne Wade. So everybody's like, we didn't get LeBron. But those other guys end up being pretty good players further down the draft. So
or Darko.
Well, yes. I sort of skipped Darko at number 2. You had to bring it up.
Somebody got Darko.
And people say, Darko who?
Yeah, exactly. That was a long time ago now. Much more to get to, just getting warmed up here. 27 picks more to go, and a look at a complicated summer for the defending 5-time Western Conference champion Warriors is ahead. Plus, AD is headed to L.A. What the rest of the Lakers summer looks like as we continue with our 2019 mock draft. Mock draft so far, 3 first-team All-Americas, 2 players from Duke, 1 from Murray State. That leads us to the Lakers, wink, wink, who have the 4th overall pick. Tom Penn explains what's going on with their big picture situation.
Wow, it's all big picture in Los Angeles. Forget about the draft. They're in go-for-it mode, and it's going to be about free agency. Now that they have LeBron paired with AD, just what they wanted, the big question is, what do they do next? They only have $24 million in cap space because they're given so much money to the three guys that they have. $70 million between LeBron, AD, and Kuzma. Do they go for a big three here where they get a third guy to complement them? Or do they spread it around with multiple veterans? Here's what they need. They need complementary players. They need shooters. They need veterans that know what they're doing. And they need those ring chasers. The Warriors every year have gotten the best bargain free agents to come because they want to come for that ring. Well, guess what? The Lakers are favored for the ring. They should be able to ring up their phone and get a lot of yeses. The question is, how are they going to spend that money? Now, they have the fourth pick, Andy. You have the fourth pick. You know it's going back to New Orleans. So who should David Griffin take as a complimentary player to Zion?
So David Griffin now on the phone with Rob Pelinka trying to orchestrate this. And we said at the beginning, you have the top three. That's the biggest consensus we've seen in decades where the 1, 2, 3 is locked. So the draft really starts at 4. And that's where I'm going with DeAndre Hunter from the national championship Virginia Cavaliers. Hunter, remember everyone, was hurt for the game against UMBC last year. Did not play.
Right.
So we can't blame him. Came back, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. In every statistical category during his career at Virginia, he got better. He is a great defender. He's got a skill that transfers immediately to the NBA. His offensive game is only going to improve, Billy. So if he stays in New Orleans, they get a guy that they know what they're getting out of him. They know exactly his skill set. If he's on the move, I think he's got value as a player.
He does, because he's a proven guy. He can play defense, he can score, he's got a great size. The way this game is played, it fits for him. He can shoot the three, he can guard guys on the perimeter. I love his demeanor on the court, and the one thing about it, he's won. UVA players win, and when winning translates to the pro game. So I love everything about him, and I think if Griff keeps him, he'll fit in nicely with them.
He knocked down 4 threes, had 27 in the national championship game. And to oversimplify things, as we tend to do with these players in terms of their evaluation, 3-and-D guy, right? Coming in, you know that right away. What else can he potentially do in the NBA?
Well, I think it's his leadership, because he has won. Sometimes guys come in the league and they haven't won. They don't know how to, lead. He's going to come in and know what he's been taught by his coach there. He's going to come in and give leadership to this organization. Him and Zion both. Zion is a little younger, but if he's going there, they both have won. So they know what it takes, and they play for great coaches and played in a good league as well.
And he wants to and likes playing defense. That's huge.
That's a good thing.
You know what I mean? He doesn't care necessarily that he gets all the stats on the offensive side. He's okay going in and being a defensive stopper.
If it's Alvin Gentry or who knows who else, depending on what David Griffin decides to do with this pick, they'll love that. Coaches like that sort of thing.
Well, and the one thing is the way they play, too, because they get up and down the floor and run. I think he'll fit in that space. A little bit different in UVA because they like to control tempo, but I think with athleticism, with Zion, he will fit.
UVA, even with the 300, however many Division I teams, they're always dead last in pace. And he's going to a New Orleans team that Alvin Gentry would like to make number 1 if humanly possible. All right, 5th pick is owned by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Back to you, Billy.
Well, there's a guard that plays at UNC and I love, and that's Kobe White. He's 6'5", 190 pounds. I love everything about him. He's a guy that can score, put the ball on the floor. He's bigger than Ja Morant, so I think he can finish. But with that hair, he may be like 6'7". But the one thing I like about him, he's not afraid to take big shots, and he will put the ball forward and go to the hole. Now, people may say they got Colin Sexton there. Why would they take another guard? I think you can put them in the backcourt together and they can play together because they both handle the basketball. Beeline's offense is a 2-guard front a lot of times. Now you can get 2 of these guards, put them back there, and let them play basketball.
And there are no positions anymore, right?
Exactly.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point, I think we're going to talk about this later when they have another pick with John Beilein. Think about the other guards he had. Most recently, Xavier Simpson. Go back to Trey Burke. He likes a scoring lead guard. Kobe White became that at North Carolina. I think he will love this selection. And yet again, a player that I thought might be available for my team coming up, he has snatched away from me.
That's going to happen from time to time. Roy Williams called him the best scoring point guard he's ever coached. That includes Kansas and North Carolina. With Beilein's offense, if he's paired with Colin Sexton, what kinds of adjustments will he have to make coming into the NBA?
Well, the big issue for him is decision-making. I saw him early in the season, and then I saw him later in the season, and things improved dramatically, which is natural. He was a freshman. So I think that's what you're going to see from him is, Beilein goes back to the fundamentals, and we'll see a lot of that with him coaching, even in the NBA, passing, moving, your feet, your hands, everything. And, I think they'll just try to tweak that, which is a natural sort of maturation for a player that's only been playing at the highest level for 1 year.
Well, it's going to be interesting for him because he's got some veteran guys on that team, and Kevin Love and those guys are going to say, we're going to go back to the fundamentals. Those guys are going to say, Coach, we've been in this league for a while. So.
Right.
But the interesting thing right now, we've done this mock draft. 4 of the 5 players drafted from the ACC, which tells you how talented that league was.
All right, let's see if it continues. 6th pick owned by the Phoenix Suns. Andy, you've got it.
All right, so the Suns, you could argue, need everything. I mean, they're not in this position for no reason. But Darius Garland, to me, is one of the more intriguing players in this draft. That's why I have them taking. He was at Vanderbilt, but only briefly because he got injured early. So he only played basically a handful of games and then went home and to rehab, which is not the norm, but that might be the new normal if a player gets hurt like this. But he's got the talent. Had he stayed healthy, we'd be talking about him up in that John Morant grouping, in that top 3. Morant passes him, maybe Kobe White as well. But before he got hurt, he had 33 against Liberty right at the beginning of the season. So, he has the talent to certainly take his game immediately to the NBA. And look, with no Darius Garland, Vanderbilt went winless in the SEC. So he was pretty important.
Is a torn meniscus a clean enough injury, for lack of a better term, to not give you any concerns about picking him at 6, for instance?
Well, it depends about the meniscus. If they repair it, then it takes a lot longer for them to sit out because you want it to heal. If they trim it out, then it come back sooner. But at his age, I'm not worried about that. The ACLs, those type of injuries are much more complicated. But the meniscus, I'm not as worried about it. But I do like his game. And if you go back and think about Joel Embiid, when he was at Kansas, he missed a lot of time. He slipped in the draft board. Sixers drafted him. He got hurt that year, but now he's playing, and he's pretty good. So I think this is a kid that could turn out to be almost like a Joel Embiid, somebody to get him down low, and he could be one of the best players in the draft.
I guess the follow-up question would be, in terms of fit with Phoenix, a scoring point guard playing alongside Devin Booker, is that a fit?
Well, I think they need a point guard. I mean, if they need a point guard.
They needed a point guard for a while.
Because they try to play Booker there. But if you think about Damian Lillard and McCollum up there, both those guys are scoring. They make it work. I think the more guys you have on the floor that can score the basketball and put pressure on defense, I think that'll be okay. Because they need another guy that can take some pressure off Booker, and I think he'll do that by scoring the basketball.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a situation where, and he told us at the lottery that he was ready to go and will be ready to go. But it's out of sight, out of mind. I think people are just sort of nitpicking his game a little bit because we just didn't see him for months.
Right.
Had we seen him, Vanderbilt would not have been winless. They would have been somewhere, maybe even a bubble team. Maybe they would have gotten in. I mean, he was that valuable to Vanderbilt.
We didn't see much of Kyrie Irving when he was
played 11 games.
That turned out okay.
And it did okay.
So far, he's been pretty good in the NBA. All right, stick with us. Much more on the way. The Wizards have hit a wall, namely John, his injury, and his contract. Not that we know who will be making the summer decisions in D.C., but big picture Wizards on the way when we come back. 6 picks into our 2019 mock draft presented by State Farm. Time for the Chicago Bulls, who are a lottery loser, 4th worst record in the league, but they'll pick 7th on draft night. And Billy, you are representing Chicago.
Well, I have Chicago taking Cam Reddish out of Duke, 6'8", 210 pounds. And the reason is that Chicago traditionally have taken a lot of Duke players. You go back to Jay Williams, you go back to Luol Deng, you go back to Wendell Carter, Chris Duhon. So there's a tradition there of them taking Duke players. Here's a player that was probably going to be top 3 selection in the draft going into the college basketball season. Didn't have the season he thought he was going to have. Shot 33% from three-point range on 7 threes. He has the ability to shoot the basketball. Got great size, great length. The one thing is, how bad does he want it? But he has all the skill set to do it. He's got the athletic ability to do it. Now it's up to him. And I think if the Bulls take him, I think he'll fit with them how they play.
Yeah, he's sort of the quiet member of that Duke.
Yeah.
Really foursome when you include Trey Jones, who decided to stay put. He made a big shot against Florida State, sort of the biggest of the year when he had that game winner. But once again, I think he's another player that has barely scratched the surface of his potential and we could really see him shine in the NBA. And with the Bulls, I mean, they're going to need someone like that to come in and give them that pop.
Well, you see that all the time with some of these super teams that the Dukes and North Carolinas and Kentuckys can recruit when they bring in all these McDonald's All-Americans. Not everybody's going to score 20 a game, and we've seen a bunch of instances where guys come out and exceed what they were doing at the college level. But you touched on something that I think a lot of people have wondered about, and that's kind of his motor and how much he wants it. He's a bit of a polarizing figure.
He is. And he's that player that, a lot of people say he's one of those players that can get you fired as a coach because of the potential that he has. But I do think he's a good kid. And I think the problem when he was at Duke, when you were with Zion, he was a phenom, and he took a lot of oxygen out of the room. And I think RJ was able to fill that void. And I think Cam sort of fell through the cracks a little bit, not because of the way they played, just because Zion was getting so much and RJ. And so I think Cam going to the pros now is going to be in a different environment. And I think he'll get more shots because the floor is space and there's more double teams. So I think this will be a great opportunity for him because he's going to get a lot of looks, and now he's got to knock him down.
Now playing for Jim Boylan, if all it plays out, I mean, he's going to expect that motor to be,
well,
Jim's going
to need to get that motor running, or he's going to turn it off and sit you down a little bit.
Jim's a little demanding.
Yes.
All right, now to the Hawks are another lottery loser. They expected to do much better in terms of the odds, but they also have 3 first-round picks coming in, and you've got them at number 8.
Yeah, so we'll see if they keep this. The one thing I know about the Atlanta Hawks is they don't need a point guard because they've got Trae Young. So at this point in the draft, the player that has already slipped now to number 8 that I absolutely love is Jarrett Culver from Texas Tech. First player at Texas Tech to score over 1,000 points in just a couple of seasons. It was last season that he was not the main man when Texas Tech got a number 2 seed. This season, everyone thought, expectations would be lower, and yet Culver, Big 12 Player of the Year, leads Texas Tech not just to the Big 12 co-championship at K-State, past Kansas, but to the national championship game. And very much like DeAndre Hunter, he likes to defend, which certainly Atlanta and a lot of the teams could have and would want in the NBA. And so he's a tremendous young man. He's a sponge. I think he's ready for this next transition in his career. He can score. He can do a little bit of everything. Look at the numbers right there. I think he would be a great complement to a Trae Young.
No, I love everything about him, especially the fact that he loves to play defense. In this league, you want to have a lot of guys at the wing position that can defend because you're going to face a lot of offensive guys that can score. So you're going to put him at, it reminds me a lot of Kawhi Leonard because of the fact his scoring touch, shooting sometimes vanished in games and people question his shot. That's like Kawhi. Kawhi came in as more of a defensive player. His shot got better and became a great 3D player.
Had a tough shooting night in the national title game, just 5 of 22 in that game, but a two-way player, the Big 12 Player of the Year. And when you're evaluating wings defensively in this day and age, what are you looking at?
Well, you're looking for length. You want to have guys with long arms. I like guys with big hands, but also you want guys that are not afraid to compete. They don't have to be good laterally, but you've got to be willing to compete because if you don't, there's guys in this league that will take your heart when you get on the court. So you got to be willing to compete and go after them every night.
The other 2 things I'll say quickly about their run is even though he was the leader, he was okay deferring to someone even like Matt Mooney, this transfer that came from South Dakota. He didn't need all the attention. And when you go into the NBA and you're going to, let's say, hypothetically, a team like Atlanta where Trae Young now is the guy, he's not going to expect anything. Right. He has to earn it, which is what they do in Texas Tech and in Lubbock. So I think that's very critical. And to his statistics, he had timely shots. There were times where the numbers didn't look great, but then he'd make that big shot to either kickstart a run or, continue one to really elevate a lead from 5 to 8 or what have you.
All right, we're on to the number 9 pick held by the Washington Wizards. And Tom, the Wizards have significant problems, 2 significant injuries to John Wall, not to mention an even more significant contract they owe him moving forward, and the fact that at the moment there's no permanent decision maker on staff with Washington. They're still looking for their top exec.
Yeah, that's my first big thing with them. Who's the boss in Washington? It's very unusual to not have a definitive general manager. Tommy Shepard's the interim GM, very smart guy, but we don't know who the boss is long term. There's all sorts of rumors about who they're hiring. They're capped out, injured, and are they stuck in the middle now? You referenced John Wall's injury. He's owed $38 million next year, first year of many more years. Beal's owed $27 million. This is what they have. And they can't, it's very difficult to get better because they don't have the assets to go trade. They don't have cap room to play with. So you got Wall and Beal as your core. So the big challenge right now is how do you get some greatness? Can you get greatness at number 9? And, look, Stoudemire went at 9. Paul Pierce went at 10. At 11 was Klay Thompson. So it's there, Billy. Who you taking for greatness at 9?
Well, I'm going to go to the University of North Carolina and Nasir Little. He's 6'6", 225. And like you said, Tom, this team is going to have to rebuild. With Wall out, they shouldn't try to rush to make the playoffs. So if you take Little, he's got length. He's explosive at the rim, 7'1" wingspan. I love everything about him. His athleticism, finishing at the rim, very explosive. They will allow him to give him time to play because there's no pressure on them going on. And my goal for them is let him play with the young guys and try to get back in the lottery again next year and add another player to this team because you had him. The one thing the Wizards need, they need length at the wing spot. They don't have any length. They've traded Otto Porter. Mm-hmm. They've gotten rid of a lot of their long wing players, and here's one that can help them.
You know, Nasir Little is a great example of why, you know, and I know we may change the one and done and all that, but he's a great example of why it actually was important to go to college because he wasn't ready when the season started. And for whatever reason, which is normal for a freshman, it just took him longer, and he became a much more important player later in the season, got a feel of the game, the speed going from high school to college. And so it may just take him another, a little bit longer before he get into the NBA. But the potential is there. He certainly can have an impact and be another complementary piece if, Wall and everyone stays put.
He was ranked as high as number 2 among high school prospects coming into North Carolina.
Right,
his
and it just
talent
took
there,
him,
it's recognized. It didn't show up in the numbers necessarily. All right. More to come here. A promising